Hey guys, so I've seen people doing these kind of videos called like wrap-up videos where they show you what they've read throughout the month. I'm gonna call mine what I read the month just because I think that's a little bit better than straight up stealing everyone else's idea, but that's basically what I'm gonna be doing. I just thought it was a cool way to give quick book reviews just to let you guys know what I've been up to, what I've been reading. So to start out, this month I finished the series of Shadow and Bone. So this is the first book. I think it's called the Grisha series, or the Grisha trilogy. I'm not really sure like what the name of this series is, but I read the first one earlier on, and so this month I've finished up with Siege and Storm, as well as Ruin and Rising. Both these books are by Lee Bardugo. I'm really bad with name pronunciations. But overall, the reason I wanted to start reading these books was because of the covers. I really like them. They stand out to me for some reason. And they had pretty good ratings online. I can't say I got on with them as well as other people seem to. I found that the beginnings of these books are all three of them. Like, for me, definitely the first one was the least enjoyable. I found it to be fairly dragging. It was hard to get on with the characters. It was a little bit dull for most of the book, but I bought them all at once. So I was like, okay, I've got to continue. And I'm glad that I did, because the second one, Siege and Storm, was a lot better than the first one. But just like the first one, this one struggles from the problem of starting off really slow. I find that these books, both of them, all three really, are really slow up until at least halfway through, personally for me. However, they are good because they do bring out a lot of, like, the books are very character driven, and I think that to me that's not really my favorite type of book to read. I prefer books that are more action, where the characters develop through things that have happened, versus like just hearing a lot of exposition about the characters talking about themselves, and I feel like that's a lot of what these books are. But this book in particular, Siege and Storm, really benefited from the introduction of new characters that were very compelling. In this book, you're introduced to a sort of pirate ship captain named Sturmhond and his crew, and him and his crew are all very compelling to me. I found them to be really funny, really interesting, and they added a nice element to the books that wasn't there in the first book. The first book you'd probably really like if you love magical schools or the development of magic, because that's in there mostly in the first book. It's not so much carried on in the series. The series does have quite a bit of action. Every book features some action that's pretty well done, but overall I can't say that they were amazing, but I did really enjoy them, especially this one. And then this one was the same way. This one towards the end, like the last 70 pages, was really good, but it didn't benefit from that introduction of really good new characters. However, it did build on the characters we have, made them a lot more likable, and overall, I think that this was a pretty good book. I do think if you want to read the series, you've got to get through the first one, and then the second and third are pretty good. Overall, I don't think they were the best books ever, but I did enjoy reading them. So yeah, if you want books with a cool fantasy land, a cool atmosphere, kind of dark, as well as a bit of romance. I feel like the romance isn't totally terrible and exhaustive in these books. I think that the romance is handled well and it makes sense. And overall, my favorite part was the magic system. I think the magic system is really creative, really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would recommend these. I gave the first one 3 out of 5. I gave Siege and Storm 4 out of 5, and I gave this one, Ruin and Rising, 4 out of 5. The next book that I read this month was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and I have to say, as much as it hurts me to say this, I had this book recommended to me by a friend, and, you know, we go back and forth, and as much as I don't want to admit it to him, this is probably one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It's kind of a big read. Mostly it's just because of the one that I got, the, like, mass market paperback, but I didn't want to pay 20 bucks for the other one. I'm very cheap when it comes to my books. And anyway, I started this. This was the first ever, aside from Game of Thrones, adult fantasy book that I read. I basically stuck to young adult books and, you know, like YA fantasy, YA dystopian novels, that sort of thing for the longest time, and I did read Game of Thrones, but ever since then I've been trying to find other adult sort of fantasies that I would enjoy, and I just didn't really know where to start. So I was talking to him about this book, and he recommended it, and it took me a bit to get into this one. It is like 750 pages long, and the only thing I can find wrong with this book really is that since this book is set up as a retelling, so it's Quoth is the main character, and he is retelling his life story to a chronicler, and the chronicler is writing it down, and this is what the book is just a retelling of his life. And basically, the first 100 to 150 pages is exposition, and it's quite dry, and it's kind of hard to get through, but then as soon as you get through that, it is an amazing book. The world of this book is incredible. It's so expansive, it's so interesting, and the main character, Quoth, is just so compelling. He's just a very interesting character. I think my favorite part about this book is that all of the characters are so distinctly different and so distinctly human. Every single character in this book, and there's tons of them, feels like it could be a real person. I definitely really love this book. It feels like a huge Robin Hood adventure. It's just so good at developing a magic system and developing a world, and overall I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I can't wait to read the next one. I just haven't started it yet because it's such a behemoth. It's like 1100 pages long. I haven't started it because I really want to be able to take my time with it, and I don't want to feel rushed, so I didn't start it yet for reasons I'll discuss in a moment. But yeah, this one was truly amazing. If you're looking for an approachable adult fantasy that's basically always interesting, always full of action, there's a little bit of romance in this book, but it feels very organic and natural to the book itself and to the characters, I would totally recommend this. I think the only problem I have with it is that it didn't tell me everything I wanted to know, but I mean, it is going to be a series, so yeah, I totally think this was amazing. I cannot wait to read A Wise Man's Fear. I think that's what the name of the next one is. And overall, I would recommend this to anyone. It wasn't a particularly challenging read, and once I got into it, I plowed through it. So yeah, 5 out of 5. And the last book that I read this month was this one, which is A Quart of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And I had a weird time with this book. I think that I am the type of person that really doesn't like a ton of exposition right off the bat in a book, and I kind of also went into this book a little bit jaded. When I picked it up, I got it at Costco for cheaper than normal, and I got it because it had good ratings, but I didn't really read anything about it. I didn't really know any information going into it. Then right before I picked it up to read it, I found out that it's supposed to be like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I don't really like retellings. I'm not a huge fan. I will read them, sometimes enjoy them, but for the most part, that's not really the kind of book I'm going to pick up. So overall, I was a little bit jaded going into this one, and this one I 100% think does not even get started until page 300. The first, 300 pages of it are quite, fluffy. It's very romance-driven. I mean, it makes sense because it is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it's very heavily romance-driven. It's also very character-driven, and I think my biggest problem with it is right off the bat, I didn't like the main character. She was very... She constantly was fighting this desire that she had to essentially get away and get back home, and no matter what happened, even if it was better that she didn't go home, she couldn't drop that, and to me I just found it very annoying. I just couldn't get over that every second paragraph she was talking about this. And it makes sense to the story. It really does build over time to get to the end where all of the good stuff in this book happens. It makes me think that the next book in this series would be very good because of the way that this one is set up, that all the really good stuff happens towards the end. So I think that this was a big setup for the second book, and that after this one, it'll be much better. I still gave this book a 4 out of 5 because of the last 150 pages. It was really good. It does have that sort of typical YA dystopian young adult novel setup. I just repeated myself. I said YA and young adult, but whatever. You know what I mean? It's got that same sort of formula that they all do, but I feel like this one was really interesting towards the end. All the characters really came into their own. They were all very distinct and, like, not so much likable, but you grew to understand why they might have been annoying at the beginning and that sort of thing. So towards the end of this book, I began to actually be really invested, and at the end I was like, oh my god, I have to read the next one. But I'm gonna postpone it because of the other one that I want to read. But yeah, I think that this book was really good. It's great if you like fairy tales. I would definitely recommend it if you like retellings, because it is a good one. I would say that anyone could read this. It's not a particularly hard read. There is a lot of, like, sex scenes, though, which I wasn't expecting. They are well done and well handled, but it's a little bit weird when I was thinking it was just gonna be like a, you know, fluffy retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But overall, it does have a lot of dark elements. It does have a lot of weight to it towards the end. So I would definitely recommend it to people that like fantasy or YA dystopian, that's sort of there. Overall, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Think it was pretty good, and I'm definitely excited to read the next one. So that's all the books that I read for August, but I want to briefly talk about this one. So sorry I have the dust cover off, but it is A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir, or Tahir. I seriously wish someone would tell me how to pronounce that, but overall, I just got this book. I just started reading it. I've been waiting for it for so long. If you guys watched my previous video of a review in An Ember in the Ashes, I am going to read this one, and I'm hoping to do a review for this one in a couple weeks. Hopefully I'll finish it sooner than that, but I'm going back to school, so I don't exactly know how long it'll take me. But yeah, that's why I didn't start A Wise Man's Fear, and that's also why I didn't start reading the next one of A Quart of Thorns and Roses, because this one came out, and I really want to read it. I've already started, I'm about 50 pages in, and yeah, that's why I haven't started any of these other ones. So I'm really hoping that this month I can get through a few more, and at the end of September I'll be able to show you what I read. So yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Lets me know that you guys are interested in these book videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys like these videos, and until next time, bye! So today I'm going to do a review on An Ember in the Ashes. It is a young adult novel by Sabaa Tahir.